In a quiet village where traditions held strong and secrets lingered beneath the surface, a young woman's life was changed forever by the betrayal of her stepmother. It was a betrayal that started as whispers in the shadows but quickly grew into a storm that threatened to consume everything. What seemed like an ordinary family relationship turned out to be a twisted story of deception, vengeance, and a twist no one could have predicted. This is the tale of a stepmother's deceit and the unexpected journey that followed. Lena had always believed in the idea of family. The bond between a mother and daughter, the love between a husband and wife, these were the things she had grown up with, and the ideals that had shaped her world. However, the world she had come to know began to shift when her father remarried Isla, a woman whose beauty and charm seemed to captivate everyone in their village. On the outside, Isla appeared to be the perfect stepmother, gracious, poised, and loving. But for Lena, something didn't sit right. It began with small things. Isla's smiles were too rehearsed, her gestures too calculated. While she always seemed kind, there was an underlying coldness in the way she spoke to Lena, almost as if she were trying to prove something. When Lena was younger, she had brushed off these feelings. After all, Isla was her father's choice, and she didn't want to cause trouble. But as she grew older, the doubts only grew stronger. Her once close-knit family felt like it was slowly slipping through her fingers, as if someone was purposefully eroding it from the inside. One day, Lena stumbled upon a letter while cleaning the attic, buried in a forgotten box filled with old family memorabilia. The letter was old and yellowed with age, written in a handwriting that looked familiar. Upon closer inspection, she realized it was addressed to Isla. The words were intimate, expressing deep emotions, with phrases that suggested a past relationship her father had never mentioned. Her heart raced as she read through the letter. There was mention of secrets, promises, and a history that went far beyond what she had ever known. Her first instinct was to ignore it. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, and she certainly didn't want to tarnish her father's image. But the more Lena thought about it, the more the pieces started to fall into place. Isla's coldness toward her made sense now. She wasn't the loving stepmother Lena had always assumed. There was something more, a hidden agenda, a carefully constructed web of lies that Lena had never noticed before. Her mind raced, trying to piece together what this revelation meant. But one thing was clear. Her father's marriage to Isla wasn't built on the foundation she had always imagined. The questions gnawed at Lena, keeping her awake at night. How much of what Isla had told her father was true? Had she been playing a role all along, hiding behind the facade of the perfect wife and stepmother? Or was there something darker, something more insidious going on beneath the surface? The more Lena thought about it, the more the weight of the situation sank in. If the contents of that letter were true, it meant that her father had been living a lie for years. The next morning, Lena decided to confront her stepmother. She had to know the truth. As much as she dreaded the confrontation, she knew it was necessary. With her heart pounding in her chest, she found Isla in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. For a moment, Lena stood at the door, watching her stepmother's graceful movements. Isla's beauty was undeniable, her elegance flawless, but it only served to heighten the sense of unease Lena felt. "Isla," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." Isla turned, a smile appearing on her face as she saw Lena standing there. "Of course, my dear. What's on your mind?" Lena walked toward her, clutching the letter in her hand. The paper felt heavy, as though it held the weight of years of deception. She had rehearsed this conversation in her head 1,000 times, but now that she was standing here, facing Isla, the words seemed to fail her. "I found something," Lena said, her voice shaking slightly. "A letter, addressed to you. From someone I don't know." Isla's expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "A letter? From who?" Lena hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. She had always been taught to respect her elders, to trust her family. But this was different. The truth she had uncovered wasn't just about a letter. It was about everything that had been hidden, about the lies that had been told, and the secrets that had been buried for years. "From someone who seems to know you very well," Lena replied. "Someone who you were close to in the past." Isla's face went pale, and for a moment, the calm demeanor she had always carried with her slipped away. Lena could see the shift in her stepmother's eyes. There was no longer any pretense. This was the real Isla, the woman who had been hiding something for so long. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lena," Isla said quickly, trying to regain her composure. "There's nothing in that letter you need to worry about." But Lena could see through her. The guilt was written all over Isla's face. This was no ordinary letter. This was a letter that revealed a side of Isla that Lena had never known. Lena took a step forward, holding the letter out. "I need to know the truth. Why did you keep this from us? Why didn't you tell my father?" Isla's eyes softened, and for a moment, there was silence. Lena could see the internal struggle in Isla's expression, but it didn't change the fact that this betrayal was about to come to light. I didn't want to hurt him," Isla said softly. "I thought I was protecting him, protecting you. But now, it seems I've only caused more pain." Lena felt her heart sink. The betrayal was deeper than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just a secret, it was a carefully orchestrated plan, a lie that had lasted for years. The woman standing before her wasn't the person Lena had thought she knew. With that, the confrontation ended. Isla didn't offer any more answers, and Lena walked away, her heart heavy with the truth she had uncovered. The foundation of her family had been built on lies, and now, everything was about to change. What Lena didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The truth had been revealed, but the consequences would take far longer to unravel. The day after her confrontation with Isla, Lena couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of betrayal. Her stepmother had been hiding something so massive, so deeply embedded in their lives, that it left Lena reeling. But the truth was out, and as painful as it was, Lena knew it was only the beginning. The letter had been the first crack in the facade, but there was more lurking beneath the surface. Lena spent the entire night thinking about everything she had uncovered. She had always respected her father and trusted his decisions, but now she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew. How could he have not seen the signs? How could he have been so blind to Isla's manipulations? It was as though the woman he had chosen to marry was someone entirely different than the person he believed her to be. The anger that boiled inside Lena only grew, and she couldn't bring herself to speak to her father just yet. There was too much at stake, too much uncertainty. The following day, Lena decided to dig deeper. She knew that in order to truly understand what Isla had done, she would have to confront the full extent of her stepmother's past. The more Lena thought about it, the more she realized that Isla had played a much more active role in their family's life than anyone had known. Her manipulation wasn't just about a business deal or an affair, it was something far darker. It seemed that Isla had orchestrated her way into Lena's father's life for a purpose beyond love. This revelation changed everything. Lena decided to visit the local library. She knew that the records of the village's history and its key players might hold a key to unlocking the full mystery of Isla's life. She'd heard whispers about Isla's past before, but nothing concrete had ever come to light. As Lena sifted through old records, newspapers, and letters, she found pieces of information that painted an alarming picture. Isla had been involved in a series of shady dealings long before she had entered Lena's life. She had been a part of a network of people who had used manipulation, deceit, and power to get what they wanted. Even more unsettling was the fact that she had been involved in the illegal dealings that had caused their family's financial downfall years ago. Lena's father had always claimed that their family had simply fallen on hard times, but now it was clear that there had been an active force behind the collapse. And that force was Isla. It was hard to believe. How could someone who had been such a part of their family, someone Lena had called a mother for so many years, have been this deeply involved in something so nefarious? The more Lena discovered, the more she realized that the family she had grown up in had been based on a lie. Her father had been used by Isla in ways she never could have imagined. The woman he had trusted so blindly had played him for a fool. Lena felt an overwhelming sense of guilt. She had seen the cracks in their relationship before, but she hadn't wanted to believe the worst. Now, the weight of what she had uncovered felt suffocating. Her father had always been kind, loving, and a pillar of strength in her life. He had been a man who was always there for her, who had worked hard to give her the best of everything. And now, she had to face the reality that her father had been taken advantage of by someone he loved. She felt betrayed on his behalf, and the injustice of it all consumed her. Determined to understand the full scope of Isla's deception, Lena confronted Isla again, this time armed with the knowledge she had gained. She had already exposed one layer of Isla's lies, but Lena knew there was more to the story. It wasn't just about the affair or the financial scheming, It was about the years of manipulation, the cold, calculated way Isla had weaved herself into their lives. Lena found Isla sitting in the living room, as though nothing had changed. She looked almost serene, but Lena knew better now. The woman who had once seemed so perfect, so poised, was nothing more than a master manipulator. The woman in front of Lena was someone who had carefully constructed a life built on lies. And now, it was all crumbling down. "You've been hiding more than just the letter, haven't you?" Lena said, her voice calm but filled with the weight of her discoveries. Isla looked up at her, her expression faltering for just a moment. But she quickly regained her composure. "Lena, I don't know what you've been told, but I can explain." Lena's anger flared, but she held herself together. "I've seen the records, Isla. I know everything. You've been manipulating my father, and you've been hiding your involvement in illegal dealings. For years, you've lied to all of us." Isla's face paled, but she didn't try to deny the truth. Instead, she sat in silence, her eyes shifting nervously. "I never meant for things to get out of hand," she said quietly. "I didn't want to hurt him. But I had to do what was necessary to survive." Lena's heart broke at her words. She had always known Isla had a sharp edge, but this revelation was something else entirely. Isla wasn't just a woman who had made a mistake. She was someone who had used her charm, her beauty, and her wit to secure everything she wanted, at the cost of her husband's trust and their family's peace. "You've taken everything from us," Lena said, her voice rising. "You've used him for your own gain, and now we're left to pick up the pieces." For the first time, Isla seemed to lose her composure. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she let out a shuddering breath. "I didn't know how to stop," she whispered. "I didn't know how to let go of the power I had." Lena shook her head. "It's too late for apologies. You've hurt us all. You've ruined this family." Isla stood up slowly, her voice shaking. "Please, Lena. You don't understand. I did what I thought I had to do. I thought I could protect us all." But Lena was beyond hearing her excuses. The damage was done. The family she had once known and loved was no longer the same. The betrayal had destroyed the trust that had held them together, and now, all Lena could do was face the painful truth and figure out what to do next. After the confrontation, Lena felt both relief and a growing sense of dread. She had uncovered the layers of deception, but the weight of what she had learned was almost too much to bear. Isla's betrayal was deeper than she had ever imagined. As hard as it was to accept the truth, there was still one thing Lena hadn't expected, the devastating consequence of what would happen next. Lena's father, Elias, had been silent ever since the truth came out. He had retreated into himself, consumed by the realization that his entire life had been a lie. The man who had been her protector and pillar of strength now seemed fragile and broken. Lena had tried to speak to him, but every time she did, he would shut himself off, retreating behind walls of guilt and sorrow. She could see the devastation in his eyes, but he was struggling to process the betrayal from the woman he loved, the woman who had betrayed him on so many levels. For weeks, their home had been shrouded in tension. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken words. Each dinner felt awkward, every glance felt like a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Even though Lena had exposed the truth, there was no simple solution. Her family was fractured beyond repair, and every attempt at rebuilding felt futile. Isla, though she tried to apologize, seemed powerless against the enormity of what she had done. She had thought she could manipulate everything to her advantage, but now she faced the consequences of those manipulations, and her world was crumbling too. Lena, too, found herself at a crossroads. She had been the one to expose the secrets, but now she was left with a world she barely recognized. The person she had once thought of as a mother was no longer the same woman. She had built a life of lies, and in doing so, she had destroyed the very family that had trusted her. The bond Lena once shared with Isla had evaporated, and the woman who had been the center of her family was now nothing but a stranger in her eyes. Yet, amidst the turmoil, something strange began to happen. Elias, who had been withdrawn for weeks, finally spoke. One evening, as Lena sat quietly in the living room, her father came to her. His face was weary, but there was a sense of clarity in his eyes that had been absent for so long. "Lena," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I've been thinking a lot about what's happened. And I think I've finally come to understand what's been happening." Lena turned to look at him, surprised by his sudden willingness to talk. For so long, he had been so distant, so consumed by guilt that it seemed as if he could never truly face the truth. But now, he was speaking with a sense of conviction that shocked her. "I've spent so many years thinking I knew what was best for our family. I thought that I was protecting you, Lena. But I failed you," Elias continued, his voice filled with both regret and revelation. "I let Isla's lies go on for so long that I couldn't see what was happening right in front of me. I couldn't see the woman I loved was hiding a dark truth, one that was tearing apart everything we had built together." Lena listened intently, the weight of her father's words sinking deep within her. The realization that her father had been blind to Isla's manipulation all this time was a difficult pill to swallow, but there was something else in his words, a plea for redemption. For the first time, she saw the man she had always admired not as a hero, but as a human being, vulnerable to the flaws and mistakes that everyone else had to grapple with. "Dad, I know you're hurting," Lena said softly, her voice full of empathy. "But this is something we can't just fix with words. Isla's lies have changed everything." Her father nodded, his eyes downcast. "I understand that, Lena. I don't expect things to go back to normal. I know I've betrayed you too, by not seeing the truth, by not protecting you. But I want to make things right. I want to do whatever I can to make up for the damage I've caused." Lena felt a surge of emotion rise within her. She had been angry, devastated, and lost for so long that hearing her father take responsibility for his actions stirred something deep within her. She didn't know if forgiveness was possible, not yet, anyway, but she knew that this conversation was a step toward healing. For her father, for herself, and perhaps even for Isla, though that felt like an impossible idea at the moment. The next few weeks were filled with more difficult conversations. Elias took steps to confront Isla, demanding the full truth behind her actions, and for the first time, Isla opened up. The story she told was heartbreaking. She spoke of desperation, of a woman who had come into a marriage not out of love, but out of necessity. She confessed to her insecurities, her fears, and the lengths she had gone to maintain her position in their family. But none of it made what she had done right. And even as she apologized, the damage was done. The trust had been shattered beyond repair. Lena listened to Isla's confession, but it did little to alleviate the anger she felt. Isla had not just betrayed her father, she had betrayed Lena, the daughter she was supposed to love. Still, Lena recognized that the woman standing before her, broken and regretful, was not the same person who had first come into their lives. Isla had crumbled under the weight of her lies and deceit. But the truth was that no matter how much Isla regretted her actions, the consequences were already in motion. The entire family had been forced to rebuild from the ground up. Elias began to work on mending his fractured relationship with Lena, taking small steps to regain her trust. It wasn't easy, but each conversation, each moment of honesty, felt like progress. They began to rebuild the foundation that had been destroyed, learning how to communicate again, how to heal together. For Isla, things were much harder. She had lost her place in the family, her bond with Lena forever severed. Though Elias tried to support her, she was left with the bitter reality of her actions. She had tried to control everything, thinking she could outsmart fate, but in the end, she had lost everything. She had no choice but to leave the house and start a new life. There was no other way for her to redeem herself. The family she had tried to manipulate was now free from her control. Lena's heartache began to slowly heal, though it would take time. The journey toward forgiveness was long and uncertain, and Lena knew that she had to make her own path forward. She had to choose whether to hold on to the anger or to let it go, to embrace the possibility of new beginnings or to remain stuck in the past. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, she found herself growing stronger. The story of betrayal was one that Lena would carry with her forever, but it was also a story of redemption, a story of learning to navigate the consequences of one's actions, no matter how painful the truth may be. Though the betrayal had shattered her world, Lena realized that it had also opened the door to a new chapter, one where she could take control of her own life and rewrite her future. As time went on, Lena began to understand that family wasn't just about blood. It wasn't about staying together at any cost. It was about trust, respect, and love, and those things could only thrive in an environment of honesty. She would never forget the hurt, but she also knew that the future was hers to shape. And she was ready to take the first step toward healing. As the weeks passed, the family's tension began to slowly ease, but the scars of betrayal remained, lingering in every corner of their lives. Lena and her father, Elias, spent time rebuilding their relationship, but there was no quick fix for the trust that had been broken. They had to start from scratch, and every step was a painful reminder of what had been lost. Isla, on the other hand, had no choice but to leave. The weight of her actions was too much to bear, and she realized that there was no place for her in the home she had once manipulated. She had crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed. Her regret was evident, but it wasn't enough to undo the harm she had caused. In the end, Isla disappeared from their lives, leaving a hollow space where a stepmother had once stood. Lena couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions. She was relieved to be free from Isla's influence, but at the same time, she couldn't help but wonder what her life could have been like if things had been different. She had once hoped that Isla would be the mother she had always wanted, the woman who would step in and guide her through the trials of adolescence. But instead, Isla had chosen deceit, and the repercussions were far-reaching. The mornings in their home felt different now. The weight of their family's history was still present, but it was no longer as suffocating. Elias had spent the last few weeks in deep reflection, and his sorrow was palpable. Lena could see the guilt in his eyes, and though he had apologized for his part in everything, she knew that the road to true forgiveness was long and uncertain. She wasn't sure she was ready to completely let go of the anger that had built up over the years, but she also recognized that carrying it would only weigh her down. She had to find a way to move forward. Elias had tried to make amends with her, showing through his actions that he was truly sorry. He began to involve Lena in his daily activities again, the small, mundane things that had once been their special moments. They would spend evenings cooking together, talking about everything and nothing, trying to reclaim what they had lost. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Lena began to realize that while her father's mistakes were deep, his love for her was undeniable. And that love, though imperfect, was something that she could still trust. Yet, even as things began to settle, Lena found herself unable to truly forgive Isla. She couldn't forget the years of lies, the way her father had been blindsided by someone he thought he could trust. But she also understood that forgiveness wasn't just about Isla's actions, it was about her own healing. Holding on to the anger would only prolong the pain. One evening, Lena and Elias sat down together, and for the first time in a long while, they spoke openly about the betrayal. It wasn't easy. There were tears, there was silence, and there was a rawness that neither of them had experienced before. But it was necessary. For Lena, it was a chance to finally express the hurt she had been carrying. For Elias, it was an opportunity to truly listen and understand the depth of his daughter's pain. "Dad," Lena said softly, her voice trembling, "I want to forgive you, I really do. But it's hard. I feel like everything I trusted in, everything I thought I knew about our family, was a lie." Elias reached across the table, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it over hers. "Lena, I understand. I can't change what happened, but I promise you that I will do everything I can to earn your trust again. I want to be the father you deserve." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, and for the first time in weeks, Lena felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps the damage could be undone, not through grand gestures, but through consistent effort. Through time. "I'm not sure if I'm ready to forgive Isla," Lena confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "But I can't keep carrying this anger. It's hurting me too." Elias nodded, understanding the complexity of Lena's emotions. Forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. And it's okay if you're not ready. But don't let her actions take away your peace. You deserve to find healing, regardless of what happened. Lena took a deep breath, looking out the window at the setting sun. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of relief. It wasn't forgiveness, and it wasn't closure, but it was a step toward something better. Her family wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and she was learning to rebuild it, piece by piece. Isla's absence was a void, but it also represented a new beginning. There was space now for Lena and Elias to reconnect, for them to start over. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be days of doubt, moments when the weight of the past threatened to drag them backward. But Lena knew that she could no longer let the past control her. She had to find her own way forward, no matter how difficult that might be. Over time, Lena began to heal. The process was slow, but she found solace in the small victories. She learned to cherish the moments she had with her father, rebuilding their bond without the shadow of Isla hanging over them. She started to focus on herself, rediscovering her passions and dreams. She no longer allowed Isla's betrayal to define her. Instead, she became the architect of her own future. In the end, Lena understood that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. It wasn't something that could be rushed or forced. It took time, patience, and, most importantly, self-compassion. Her family's story wasn't over, it had just taken a new turn. And Lena was ready to face whatever came next with strength, resilience, and the knowledge that she had the power to shape her own path.